and gentlemen, India's G20 presidency in 2023 and its role in adopting a unanimous declaration at the New Delhi summit was an indicator of India's growing influence in global politics and rising stature. It was at a time when a divided world witnessed the Russia-Ukraine war, and there were differing priorities between the developed countries and the global south. India, as the host of the G20 summit, was asked with the responsibility of forging a consensus on the way forward. It was a diplomatic tightrope to walk, which would have required patience, negotiations, and careful maneuverings. With Prime Minister Modi's guidance and vision, India's G20 Sherpa Amitabh Kant did that unenviable job and now has written the inside story of the G20 presidency, how India scaled Mount G20. Why do you call it Mount G20, Amitabh Kant?
So, Navika, I was the Sherpa to the Prime Minister. The job of a Sherpa is to take the lead on top of the Mount Everest. And in my view, G20 was nothing less than the Mount Everest. So I was really the Sherpa of a leader whom I could take on top of the Mount Everest.
So when you first got that phone call from the Prime Minister that you are the chosen one, the Sherpa for the G20, what was the brief that the Prime Minister gave you?
Well, firstly, I was quite taken aback because I was leaving Niti Aayog after almost about 7 years of that assignment. And I'd just gone to call on him. And at the end of the conversation, he asked me to take over as the G20 Sherpa. He was very clear that this has to be a very ambitious, very action-oriented, and a very decisive G20. And probably he said that this has to be the best ever G20 held. And he was his canvas was very large. He said that don't restrict it to Delhi. Do this G20 in every state and every union territory of India, which meant doing over 230 meetings in all the states and union territories of India. So
on day one, he
was
vision.
Absolutely clear that this has to be not a G20 of ordinary nature. This has to be a people's movement. This has to be a Jan Andolan, and everyone needs to get involved. Schools, colleges, you have to involve just about every student of India. And therefore, it was a very large and a very wide canvas and a very difficult one at that.
And when he had this vision, and he told you the brief, which was fairly detailed from the looks of it.
Yeah.
Was it from day one that you started off, or did you have many sittings with him in trying to figure out what he had imagined so that you could implement it? Because you're the implementation man. You're the man who made, as tourism secretary, the line God's own country for Kerala cadre officer. And I remember meeting you in those days. How many years ago was that?
Oh, that was almost 3 decades back.
Just tells us my age and yours. Amitabh Kant. So God's own country, and then all the water that's passed under the bridge. Do you think this was the toughest assignment you ever got?
Well, this was very difficult, very complex, because India was hosting it at a point of time when this was the post-COVID era. A large number of people across the world had lost their jobs. People had gone below poverty line. There was a challenge of climate action. There was a huge challenge of the Russia-Ukraine war. And in addition to this, there was a breakdown of global supply chains all over. So, for India to take over leadership and try and bring emerging markets on one side, the global south, G7 on the other side, Russia, China, and then countries like Turkey and Saudi Arabia on the other, all together, and to be able to weave a consensus on all development issues confronting the world was a very, very formidable challenge.
Did the Prime Minister tell you on day one that consensus is your target?
He was very clear. He said that we need to bring everyone together. But as the discussions progressed, as what had been worked out in Bali failed, and then our ministerials, one after another, did not succeed because of the Russia-Ukraine crisis. He was very clear, and I recall him saying that that you should tell these people that India will not work with a divided G20, and if the United Nations is not working, if the Security Council is not working, the only other forum is the G20. And if G20 also doesn't work, then India would rather work with BRIC and will work with IBSA rather than working with G20. So with that mandate, I was able to, be very forceful, be very tough while negotiating, because for him, consensus was absolutely critical and necessary, because multilateral forums work when you have a full consensus. Even if one country doesn't agree, the whole agreement falls apart. And therefore, consensus was absolutely critical. And if we'd done these 230 meetings, we'd done so much of hard work, we'd involved all our states, all our people, and then not achieved consensus, that would have been a failure of all of us. And therefore, it was absolutely necessary to tell these countries that the citizens of the world, the global complexity demanded that we act like matured statesmen.
So, Mr. Amitabh Kant, let me ask you, you came into this from the failure of Bali. And in your book, you write that Bali failed because there was the Zelensky factor. He arrived there, and from that moment on, it was clear consensus was something that was not going to happen. Is that why you kept all the big leaders of Russia and Ukraine out of the G20 in India?
No, well, not really. Bali, the statement was a very complex, divided, that G7 feels this, Russia feels this, China feels this. So that's not a consensus statement which fell apart. And then, in the Bali meeting, which should have been just a G20 meeting to my mind, Zelensky was invited, and he spoke for about 35 minutes, where other leaders just kept listening to him. It was a virtual address for 35 minutes. He was given 3 minutes time, but he spoke for 35 minutes. Now, when it came to our presidency...
Was it a fixed match?
Well, they'd almost decided in consultation with...
Who had?
The Indonesian leadership in consultation with G7. But when it came to our presidency, the Prime Minister was absolutely clear that this has to be G20 of the G20 countries. We don't need outsiders into this. He was absolutely clear from the word go. And that's why we stuck on with negotiating only with the G20 countries all through.
So let me ask you, Russia and China, not the best of friends at that point in time, with India, was it tough maneuvering them? Especially, you write in your book that the Sherpa from Russia did play hardball. How tough was it, and how did you get around it?
Well, it was very tough, firstly because China throughout the presidency was opposed on many of our terminologies. China was opposed to Vasudhaiv Kutumbakam. It was opposed to LIFE, which was lifestyle for environment, which we were pushing for. It was opposed even to women-led development. And
what was their problem with all of these?
Well, the Chinese diplomacy works on its own terminologies, and they wanted insertion of their terminologies, which was not acceptable to us. And it was only towards the end when they opposed it throughout the year. And it was only when we had been able to build a very close personal relationship right in the end that we were able to convince the Chinese that this is our presidency, it is in our national interest. And we won them over, and we killed them with kindness, and we saw it through.
So what was that kindness that you showed the Chinese counterpart?
Well, several things, because if you read the book, you'll realize that it's always... one is that building relationships. So we had to, you do several things. You have to threaten, you have to cajole, you have to intimidate, you have to be really nice. And I think in the case of Chinese, doing a lot of bilaterals really helped with us. And then, much later, when we were doing the agreement, the Russian Sherpa was very nice, but there was another person, the deputy minister, Mr. Pankin, who came in, and he negotiated on the geopolitical aspect of it. And when we finally got everything through, and we said in the 16 drafts had failed. The 17th draft, I said, either you take it or leave it to all the leaders. And I said, if you don't accept this 17 draft, because I knew everybody's red line, on that one para, we had done 300 hours of negotiation. We had done 250 bilaterals. I knew everyone's red line. So the final draft, we gave at about 12:30 in the night. The leaders, all the leaders had already come in, and we said, this is take it or leave it. And I walked out of the room and I said, by 4 o'clock, I want your confirmation. But the Russian deputy minister walked into my room and he said that we want a line against the sanctions. And I knew it was a red line for G7. It was not acceptable. And I said, it's not possible. It's not feasible. If we will never accept this. And they were being very difficult at that time. He consulted Mr. Lavrov and they were being very difficult. But then we told them that I consulted Mr. Shankar, and I told them that if you do not accept it, we have no other option but to get Mr. Zelensky to give the next address after our prime minister.
You actually blackmailed them.
Yeah, absolutely. There was no other choice. We said that Zelensky will be, and that's in the book, that he will be the next speaker. And we got their consent. But then, there were many challenges because in the morning,
and that idea came from Dr. Jaishankar?
Dr. Jaishankar told me that this is one thing which you must use.
Was it said in jest?
No,
or was it a real idea?
It was a real idea and it worked. And then, there were many other challenges because in the morning, the Prime Minister came to Bharat Mandapam at about 8 o'clock and he asked me whether you have achieved consensus. I said, no, sir, still a lot of work to do. And he said, I started explaining to him and said, he said, don't tell me the processes. Don't tell me procedures. I don't want to get into it. Get a consensus for me. So the brief was get consensus. Very clear.
So 12:30 to 4 deadline, nothing happened till 8 o'clock.
Nothing.
It wasn't a consensus.
Not yet.
What time?
Yet. But by 4 o'clock, I had the consent of all the other countries of G7. I had not yet got the consent of United States of America. So I phoned up the American Sherpa at about 7:30 in the morning and I asked him. So he said, give me 15 minutes time because I've yet to discuss with President Biden. And he got back to me within half an hour and he said, two conditions. He said, we'll agree to this, but there are two conditions. One word needs to be changed. So that shows you that every word, every letter matters. Secondly, he said that we want the consent of Russia and China beforehand. So the Russian consent we got the previous night, but the Chinese consent wasn't there. So I phoned up the Chinese Sherpa at about 8:15 or so. And the Chinese Sherpa said that, Mr. Kant, this document is acceptable to us, but we want something else removed. So I said, what's that? He said, we don't want United States to hold the G20 in 2026, which was accepted by everyone and which was necessary for Biden because he was getting into re-election. Now, Chinese said that these people do not give us visas. They will not give us visas for Hong Kong governor, many other people. And therefore, my prime minister says, get this line out. I said, it's not possible. Everybody has accepted it. So the meeting started, the leaders' meeting started from 9 o'clock onwards. And from 9:30 to 12:30, I sat with the American Sherpa and the Chinese Sherpa negotiating this. And the Americans said that this line has to be there. The Chinese said this line has to be removed. And finally, they said that we want a legal guarantee that America will issue visa for the entire list that China will give them. And finally, we negotiated for over 3 hours. And then I said that I'm a native English speaker, and the word ensure, a letter with saying ensure is better than guarantee, and finally we agreed on that. So a letter was given.
So you actually told them, don't teach me English?
Yeah, I had to tell the Chinese that we speak better English than you do. So a word ensure is better than guarantee.
You're a man many bureaucrats actually call a man for all seasons. You've been in Kerala, you've been in ITDC at some point.
Yeah, that's right. I was chairman of ITDC.
Chairman of ITDC. You've been investment promotion and industries secretary, and then Niti Aayog, the startup world. Make in India is a branding that you did. You're the branding guy. This brand of Vasudeva Kutumbakam and the building of the logo, were you personally involved, or were you translating and implementing the Prime Minister's vision into it?
So the Prime Minister's vision was very clear that it has to be Vasudev Kutumbakam, that it has to be one earth, one family, one future. That was totally his vision and his direction. The creative interpretation of that, we worked with the creative agency. We constantly evolved. We constantly gave new dimension to that. And we brought in constant life and energy and vibrancy and many dimensions of the lotus, the flower.
The choice of the lotus is what I was coming to.
Yeah. So the many dimensions to that. The creative concept of that was very beautifully done. And it evolved over a period of time.
So, Amitabh Kant, Lotus got you into a little bit of political hot water because there was opposition that this is the BJP's party symbol and all of that. Was it deliberate? Was that cheeky?
Well, it was a national flower, so we looked at it from that perspective. And we looked at it from the perspective of looking at the creative interpretation of that. We never took a political perspective on that.
But you could have taken many things from the environment. Why just the lotus?
Well, I mean,
there could have been a rose.
Well, this was discussed, debated, and I think a general consensus was that the creative interpretation of this looked.
Had the Prime Minister thought this through as well?
Well, I think when you do an event of this nature, which is international magnitude, we all discuss it together. I think it was an all of government effort.
Was there a message also, political message that was being sent? Because, let's talk about the reality of the country at that time. 2023 was the year before the general elections, and how we hosted the G20 was expected to play a big role in the image of the government as well, in terms of the governance, in terms of the buzz that it created. And to have in the G20 symbol a lotus was just a sweet coincidence or a planned nudging?
The objective and the intention was to make it a people's movement, to take it across India, to take it to every state, every person of India, every school, every college of India. And we thought this national flower will be the best appeal for that.
National animal name?
National flower. It had much greater appeal.
You're very guarded. Why are you so guarded?
No, I'm not guarded. I'm just giving you my assessment that the creative interpretation was far brighter. We'd already used the lion in the Incredible India. This was soft power of India on display through the national flower.
Rural India, the heart of our nation, is brimming with untapped potential. Fueled by growth and supported by government initiatives, it's driving India's economic progress. Introducing ICICI Prudential Rural Opportunities Fund, your gateway to long-term wealth creation by investing in companies benefiting from the rural economy. Invest today. NFO closes 23rd Jan. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
India is swiftly emerging as a global digital powerhouse, fueled by the rapid adoption of e-commerce, online education, and digital banking. At the heart of this transformation lies a vital force: data centers, the backbone of the global digital economy. From enabling secure financial transactions to powering cloud computing and delivering seamless online experiences, Adani Connects is leading the charge in India's digital revolution by providing trusted, scalable, and sustainable digital infrastructure. With state-of-the-art data centers across the country, Adani Connects is not only powering critical services, but also positioning India as a global hub for digital innovation and growth. Watch this special episode about Adani data centers on powering India's digital future at these times.
Rise above, seesaws, born to shine, ever light.
Presenting Kia Ceros, evolved by the future.
Kia, movement that inspires.
That's okay. फिर से ट्राई करते हैं।
जो फाइनेंशियली सिक्योर हैं, वो मिस्टेक्स से सीखना अफोर्ड कर सकते हैं। बंधन म्यूचुअल फंड, बढ़ते रहो।
म्यूचुअल फंड निवेश बाजार जोखिमों के अधीन है। योजना से संबंधित सभी दस्तावेजों को ध्यान से पढ़ें।
ਸਰਕਾਰੀ ਸਕੂਲਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਵੀ ਬਹੁਤ ਸ਼ਾਨਦਾਰ ਬੱਸਾਂ ਅਸੀਂ ਦੇਵਾਂਗੇ ਤਾਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਬੱਸਾਂ ਜਿਹੜੀਆਂ ਬੱਚਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਵੀ ਜਾ ਸਕਣ ਘਰੇ ਵੀ ਪਹੁੰਚਾ ਸਕਣ।
In the state of Punjab, under the dynamic leadership of Chief Minister Bhagwant Singh Mann, government schools are being transformed with modern facilities and free quality education. Taking another bold step, the Bhagwant Mann government is now providing new school buses for students.
GPS ਲੱਗਿਆ ਹੋਊਗਾ ਮਾਪਿਆਂ ਨੂੰ ਮੋਬਾਈਲ ਤੋਂ ਪਤਾ ਲੱਗ ਜਾਊਗਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਡੇ ਬੱਚੇ ਵਾਲੀ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਬੱਸ ਹੈ ਉਹ ਕਿੱਥੇ ਪਹੁੰਚ ਗਈ ਤੇ ਕਿੱਥੋਂ ਉਹਨੂੰ ਪਿਕ ਕਰਨਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਉੱਥੋਂ ਜਾ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ ਲੇਟੈਸਟ ਟੈਕਨੋਲੋਜੀ ਲੱਗੀ ਹੋਊਗੀ।
In the first batch, these buses will benefit over 20,000 students, ensuring safe and comfortable commutes. This is not just transportation, this is a promise of progress and opportunity for every child. This is the spirit of a new Punjab, a Punjab where education drives a brighter tomorrow.
ਪਹਿਲੇ ਬੈਚ ਵਾਸਤੇ 20,000 ਬੱਚੇ ਦਾ ਅਸੀਂ ਪ੍ਰਬੰਧ ਕਰ ਰਹੇ ਹਾਂ ਸੋ ਜੇ ਨੀਅਤ ਸਾਫ਼ ਹੋਵੇ ਕੋਈ ਨਾ ਕੋਈ ਤਾਂ ਤਰੀਕਾ ਨਿਕਲੇ ਆਉਂਦਾ।
This is New Punjab, this is Rangla Punjab.
इंट्रागोल्ड की मजबूत चैसी से मैं ज्यादा से ज्यादा सामान पहुंचा सकता हूँ और सारा का सारा लोड सेफ भी रहता है।
इसकी मजबूत चैसी, शानदार पेलोड और साथ में 3 साल की वारंटी आपके हर सपने को सच कर दिखाए। टाटा इंट्रागोल्ड पिकअप्स, सक्सेस का मंत्र।
ये आपका मूड है जो बनता है, बदलता है, बिगड़ता है, सोचता है, बहुत कुछ कहता है जब टीवी पर न्यूज देखता है, पर सुनाई किसी को नहीं देता। अपने टीवी की सिर्फ सुनिए मत, उसे अपनी भी सुनाइए। फोन उठाइए, स्कैन कीजिए, देश के मुद्दों पर देश को बताइए अपना मुद्दा।
देखिए रंजीत कुमार के साथ देश का मूड मीटर, सोमवार से शुक्रवार शाम 5:55 पर।
Amitabh Kant, let me ask you. You've worked with every single government. You've worked with state governments, which are probably in Kerala, either the left or the Congress. You've worked in the central government in the UPA years. You've now worked with this government for the last 11 years in different roles. What are your takeaways for a bureaucrat like yourself? What has been the biggest learning experience? Where have you had the maximum amount of freedom, creativity, and ease of working with bosses?
So, well, I was in Kerala and I'd landed up in a problem with the communist government there. And I was without a posting for about 10, 11 months. And as a punishment, I was given the job of Secretary Tourism because nobody had heard of Kerala as a tourism destination. And,
And what created the problem?
When I was a collector, I'd broken down about 450 buildings. Many illegal encroachments had been removed. One of them went on to become a major minister. I mean, that's complex. But as a punishment posting, I was posted there. But I used that as an opportunity. I've always felt that crisis was also an opportunity. So I used that opportunity to build Kerala as a destination, created backwaters, houseboats, went back to the roots of Kerala, Ayurveda, brought back the traditional Kathakali, Mohiniyattam, the traditional Kerala architecture, the traditional Kerala martial art, Kalripet, and the traditional Kerala cuisine, all that. And we made it one of the most exotic paradises of the world.
God's own country.
God's own country. And then, one day I got a call from the Prime Minister's office here. Mr. Brajesh Mishra came on the line, and he was the principal secretary. He said, the Prime Minister wants to go to Kerala and spend a week there. And he came and he said, no politicians, only you will be the host. So you take care of everything. So I hosted him in Kumaragam. I stayed with him for a week. And, one day we'd taken him to the backwaters. And when he came back, Mr. Brajesh Mishra told him that इस लड़के ने बहुत काम किया tourism में, इसको भारत सरकार में लाना चाहिए. तो Mr. Vajpayee turned at me and he said कि तुमने भारत सरकार के लिए अप्लाई किया. I said no sir, मैंने नहीं किया. तो he said नहीं, बहुत अच्छा किया, नहीं अप्लाई किया. अगर अप्लाई करते तो ब्रजेश मिश्रा तुम्हें टूरिज्म के बदले women and child welfare में भेज देते. That was the end of the story. Everybody laughed, forgot about it. I applied 1 year, 3 months later, and I was to go to the finance ministry. But when the file went to the PM, he changed it and brought me to tourism. As soon as I landed up, the New York Twin Tower blast happened. The
2001.
Yes. The war in Afghanistan happened. There was attack on our parliament. One crisis after another, and there was just 10% occupancy in our hotels. And at the peak of that crisis, when there was no consumer demand, when Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore had all stopped their campaigns, we launched the Incredible India campaign. And we drove it straight to the consumers, and that was the first.
It's still being used.
Yeah, so it's since then, 2001. So, it hasn't been done for the last many years, but still very vibrant and very dynamic in its nature. And then, I've been very fortunate to work. One of the chapters in that book is Leadership in Action, what I learned from the Prime Minister. Because he was my leader, I was only a Sherpa to him. And if he didn't have this big picture vision, and if he didn't have this ability to bring everybody together, and if his stature wasn't there, it would have been impossible to pull off a G20 like this. And the other thing I learned from him is that you have to be bold and risky. So we took a lot of risks as we went along. And the third was that even when a storm is brewing in a very big way, as we did while negotiating, you have to remain calm. And that we did throughout. And that's what I learned from him in a big way. And
I like the way you skipped the entire UPA era. क्या बात है जो आप छुपा रहे हैं?
Well, UPA era, I was a joint secretary, and I was in the Ministry of Tourism earlier period, and I had a tough time for a while, but then I was very fortunate to work with.
Tough time for a while. Please tell us about it.
I was very.
It's a tell-all moment, and.
So, I'd had a very good relationship working with Mr. Jagmohan, and we did a lot of good work in the field on tourism infrastructure, really transformed. And then the government changed, and we had another minister, and I was asked to do some things which are not feasible as chairman ITDC, and I said it's not feasible.
I remember doing a story in those days.
Yeah.
Was that true?
It's...
you were asked to remove all black label whiskey bottles from all the duty-free shops.
So it was not feasible because we can only buy liquor from the manufacturers. Otherwise, spurious supplies will come in. And I just took a stand that we are not going to buy from third parties and all that. And
you were forced to buy from third parties?
Yeah, we were asked to, but it was not feasible. And I just put my foot down. And fine, I was transferred out of ITDC, but that's part of life.
Your minister was, at that time, if I remember, when the story was done, in 2002, Renuka Chaudhary?
That's right.
And you were asked to buy from a third party, not the original vendor?
Yeah. But we took a stand. I feel very proud of having stood firm. And I feel very proud that we, every agency in India, from CVC to CBI, everybody backed us to the hilt that we had taken the right stand.
Did you make a comeback? You were transferred out of ITDC.
I was transferred out of ITDC, but I remained in the Ministry of Tourism. I requested the Cabinet Secretary that I should be posted out. But Mr. B.K. Chaturvedi told me that it's not, you will remain there. That was the Prime Minister's directed that. So I remained there, but after 2 months, the Minister herself was transferred to Women and Child Welfare.
That's called justice?
Well, I mean,
divine justice?
My view on that is I don't look at it from that, but I look at it from a perspective that you have to do the right things. You just need to stand firm on issues of integrity, and you need to stand firm on issues of what is right and correct.
What next for you?
Well, I'll do more writing, I'll do more traveling, and I'll do more physical exercise, do more yoga, more meditation.
I'm sure there are other things in mind many people may have for you. But for now, thank you very much for this book and the insights that you've given us and readers when they read on what really transpired in those very, very tense moments and the manner in which you could actually arm twist some of the biggest countries. So when India is set now to have achieved its stature, where it actually gets noticed in the world, the inside story is all right here. Congratulations to you, and thank you very much for joining me on the Newshour tonight.
Thank you very much, Navika. Thanks a lot.